Amara Johnson had always believed that life happened in unexpected moments. Standing in the rain outside Seoul National University's music building, clutching her violin case against her chest, she never imagined that a simple wrong turn would change everything. The 23-year-old music student from Atlanta had arrived in South Korea just 3 months ago as part of an exchange program. Her dark skin made her stand out in the sea of Korean faces, but she had grown used to the curious stares and whispered conversations that followed her everywhere. Music was her universal language, and she spoke it fluently. That autumn evening, the rain came down harder than usual. Amara had stayed late practicing for her upcoming recital, and now the building was locked. Her phone battery was dead, and she had no umbrella. The campus seemed completely empty, except for the sound of raindrops hitting the concrete. "Excuse me, are you okay?" came a voice from behind her. Amara turned around to see a young man running toward her, holding a large black umbrella. He was tall and lean, wearing an expensive-looking coat that probably cost more than her monthly allowance. His Korean was perfect, but something in his tone suggested he could speak English, too. "I'm fine. Just waiting for the rain to stop," she replied in Korean, proud that her pronunciation had improved so much. The stranger smiled, revealing perfect teeth. "Your Korean is very good, but we can speak English if you prefer. I'm Ji-hoon." He held the umbrella over both of them, and Amara noticed his hands were soft and well manicured. Everything about him seemed polished and refined, from his styled black hair to his designer shoes that somehow remained spotless despite the rain. "I'm Amara. Thank you for sharing your umbrella. You're the exchange student, right? I've heard you play violin. The whole music department talks about you." Amara felt her cheeks warm. "I hope they say good things." "They do. Professor Kim says you're one of the most talented students he's ever taught." As they walked toward the main campus, Ji-hoon seemed genuinely interested in her story. He asked about her hometown, her family, and how she was adjusting to life in Korea. Unlike the polite but distant interactions she usually had with Korean students, this conversation felt natural and comfortable. "What about you?" Amara asked. "Are you a music student too?" Ji-hoon hesitated for a moment. "I study business, but I love music. I play piano sometimes, though not nearly as well as you play violin." They reached the main road where taxis usually waited, but the area was empty. Ji-hoon pulled out his phone and made a quick call in rapid Korean that Amara couldn't quite follow. "My driver will be here in 5 minutes, he said casually. Driver? Amara thought. Most students took buses or walked everywhere. Who was this guy? A sleek black car pulled up and a man in a suit got out to open the door. Ji-hoon gestured for Amara to get in first, and she hesitated. She barely knew this person, and something about the expensive car and personal driver felt overwhelming. "I can take the bus," she said. "In this rain? Please, I insist. Where do you live?" Amara lived in a small dormitory about 20 minutes away. As they drove through the city streets, she couldn't help but notice how the driver addressed Ji-hoon with unusual formality, using honorifics that seemed excessive for a college student. "Are your parents in business?" she asked carefully. "Something like that," Ji-hoon replied, looking out the window. During the ride, they discovered they shared a love for jazz music and old movies. Ji-hoon was surprised to learn that Amara could speak 3 languages and had performed with symphony orchestras back home. Amara was intrigued by his knowledge of art and literature, and the way he spoke about traveling to places she had only dreamed of visiting. When they reached her dormitory, Ji-hoon walked her to the entrance despite the rain. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" he asked. "I know a quiet place where we could talk more about music." Amara nodded, surprised by how much she wanted to see him again. They exchanged numbers, and she watched as the expensive car disappeared into the night. Her roommate, Soo Jin, was still awake when Amara entered their tiny shared room. Soo-jin was one of the few Korean students who had become a real friend, helping Amara navigate everything from ordering food to understanding cultural nuances. "You look different," Soo-jin said in English, which she was practicing. "Happy different." "I met someone today," Amara admitted, sitting on her narrow bed. "Korean boy?" "Yes, but Soo-jin, I think he might be rich. Like, really rich. He had a driver and everything." Soo-jin's expression grew serious. "What's his name?" "Ji-hoon. He studies business." Soo-jin was quiet for a long moment, then pulled out her laptop. "What does he look like?" Amara described him, and Soo-jin began searching through what appeared to be social media sites and news articles. Suddenly, her face went pale. "Amara, I think you met Lee Ji-hoon." "So? Is that a common name?" "Lee Ji-hoon is the youngest son of Lee Corporation. His family owns half of Seoul, including hotels, shopping centers, and entertainment companies. His father is one of the richest men in Korea." Amara felt her stomach drop. "Are you sure it's the same person?" Soo-jin turned the laptop screen toward her. There was Ji-hoon's face in what appeared to be a business magazine article. He was wearing a formal suit and standing next to an older man who looked like an older version of himself. "He's like Korean royalty," Soo-jin explained. "The family is very traditional, very conservative. They only marry within certain families, usually for business reasons." "We just shared an umbrella, Soo-jin. It's not like we're getting married." But even as Amara said the words, she felt a sinking feeling in her chest. She thought about the way Ji-hoon had hesitated when she asked about his family, and how the driver had treated him with such reverence. Over the next few days, Amara threw herself into her practice sessions, trying to forget about the encounter. But on Wednesday afternoon, her phone buzzed with a text message. "Hi, Amara, it's Ji-hoon. Are you free for coffee this weekend? I know a place with amazing pastries." She stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Yes, I'd like that." Saturday morning came quickly. Ji-hoon picked her up in a different car this time, a more modest sedan, and he was driving himself. He wore simple jeans and a sweater, looking more like a regular college student. "I thought we could go somewhere less fancy today," he said with a smile. The coffee shop was small and cozy, tucked away in a neighborhood Amara had never seen before. They found a corner table, and for 2 hours, they talked about everything except his family's wealth. He asked about her childhood in Atlanta, her grandmother who had taught her violin, and her dreams of performing professionally. "I've never met anyone who talks about music the way you do," Ji-hoon said, watching her describe a particularly challenging piece she was working on. "Music is the only thing that makes sense to me sometimes," Amara admitted. "When I'm playing, nothing else matters. Not the color of my skin, not whether I fit in, not whether people understand me. Just the music." Ji-hoon nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that feeling, though for different reasons." As they walked through a nearby park after coffee, Amara decided to address the elephant in the room. "I know who you are," she said quietly. Ji-hoon stopped walking. "What do you mean?" "Lee Ji-hoon, heir to Lee Corporation. My roommate showed me the articles." For a moment, he looked disappointed, almost sad. "And now everything's different, right?" "I don't know," Amara said honestly. "Should it be?" "Most people treat me differently when they find out. They either want something from me, or they're intimidated, or they assume I'm some privileged prince who doesn't understand real life." "Are you?" Amara asked with a slight smile. Ji-hoon laughed, the tension breaking. "Probably a little bit. But I'm trying to be more than that." They sat on a bench overlooking a small pond where ducks were swimming in lazy circles. The autumn leaves were beginning to change colors, painting the park in shades of gold and red. "Can I ask you something?" Ji-hoon said. "Why did you come to Korea?" "Really?" Amara was quiet for a moment. My grandmother died last year. She was Korean War veteran's wife. My grandfather served here in the 1950s. She used to tell me stories about Korea, how beautiful it was, how kind the people were despite everything they had been through. She made me promise to see it for myself someday. And what do you think of it so far? It's complicated, Amara said honestly. Beautiful and challenging at the same time. I love the music, the culture, the history, but being different here is harder than I expected. Some days I feel invisible. Other days I feel like I'm under a microscope. Jihoon turned to look at her directly. I can't pretend to understand what that's like, but I know what it feels like to have people make assumptions about who you are before they really know you. As the afternoon wore on, they discovered more things they had in common. Both loved old jazz records, both preferred books to television, both felt pressure from their families to follow paths they weren't sure they wanted. My father expects me to take over the company someday, Jihoon confided, but I've never been sure that's what I want. Sometimes I think about what it would be like to just disappear, to live a normal life somewhere nobody knows my name. What would you do? Amara asked. Maybe teach music to kids, or open a small bookstore. Something simple and real. When it was time to leave, Jihoon drove Amara back to her dormitory. They sat in the car for a few minutes, neither wanting the day to end. Amara, Jihoon said, I want to be honest with you about something. My family, they have very specific expectations about who I should spend time with. If they knew about today, they wouldn't be happy. Because I'm not Korean? Because you're not from their world. They believe in maintaining certain traditions. Amara felt a familiar sting of rejection, though she tried not to show it. I understand. I don't think you do, Jihoon said quickly. I'm not saying I agree with them. I'm saying they would try to interfere, to make things difficult. And I need you to know that before this goes any further. What are you asking me? I'm asking if you're willing to take a risk, to see where this could go, even if it's complicated. Amara looked at his face in the dim light of the parking lot. There was something vulnerable in his expression, something that made her think about the way he had shared his umbrella with a stranger in the rain. Life's already complicated, she said finally. A little more complication might be worth it. Jihoon smiled, the same perfect smile she remembered from that first night. Would you like to see me again? Yes, she said, surprising herself with how quickly she answered. As Amara walked toward the dormitory entrance, she felt as if she was standing at the edge of something vast and uncertain. She turned back once to wave, and saw Jihoon watching her through the car window. Something had definitely changed that night in the rain, and whatever was coming next, there would be no going back. Sujin was waiting with questions and concern, but Amara wasn't ready to put her feelings into words yet. Instead, she sat at the small desk by the window and wrote a long email to her mother back home, trying to explain something she didn't fully understand herself. I think I'm falling for someone, she wrote. And I think it's going to change everything. 3 weeks passed like a beautiful dream. Jihoon and Amara met almost every other day, always in different places, always away from the university where they might be seen together. They discovered hidden cafes in quiet neighborhoods, walked through museums on weekday afternoons when they were nearly empty, and spent hours in the city's largest bookstore reading poetry to each other in hushed voices. Amara began to see Seoul through Jihoon's eyes. He showed her ancient temples tucked between modern skyscrapers, took her to street food markets where elderly vendors remembered his childhood visits, and brought her to a secret rooftop garden where they could see the entire city spread out below them like a glittering tapestry. How do you know about all these places? She asked one evening as they shared hot talk from a cart that seemed to appear only on Thursday nights. When you grow up in the public eye, you learn where to hide, he said simply. Their relationship deepened with each meeting. Jihoon was unlike anyone Amara had ever known, thoughtful and well-read, but also surprisingly funny and down-to-earth when he forgot to be the perfect heir. He told her about the pressure he felt from his family, the weight of expectations that had shaped every decision in his life since childhood. Amara shared stories about growing up as one of the few black families in her suburban neighborhood, about her parents' divorce when she was 12, about the scholarship that had made her music education possible. She told him about the grandmother who had filled their house with stories about Korea, who had taught her that love could cross any boundary if it was strong enough. "She sounds like an amazing woman," Jihoon said after Amara finished telling him about her grandmother's final weeks. She was. She used to say that music was proof that different cultures could create something beautiful together. "She would have liked you, even knowing who my family is, especially knowing who your family is. She believed that privilege came with responsibility, that people with advantages should use them to build bridges, not walls." It was during their 4th week of secret meetings that Amara realized she was falling in love. They were walking through Changdeok-gung Palace just after sunset, when the grounds were quiet and the traditional architecture seemed to glow in the evening light. "This was my favorite place when I was little," Jihoon told her, leading her along a path bordered by carefully maintained gardens. "My nanny used to bring me here when the palace was overwhelming me." "Palace?" Jihoon looked embarrassed. "The family estate. It's rather large." Amara laughed. "You live in a palace?" "It's not exactly a palace. More like a very old, very big house that happens to have been in our family for generations." They sat on a stone bench facing a small pond where koi fish created ripples in the still water. The conversation turned to their childhoods, their dreams, their fears about the future. "Can I tell you something?" Jihoon said, his voice unusually serious. "Of course. I've never felt this way about anyone before. I know that sounds like something every guy says, but it's true. My parents have been introducing me to suitable young women since I was 20. Daughters of business partners, other wealthy families. I've never felt anything for any of them. And now? Now I think about you constantly. I wake up excited because I might see you. I find myself saving things to tell you, wondering what you would think about books I'm reading or music I hear on the radio." Amara felt her heart racing. "Jihoon, I know it's complicated. I know my family will never approve. But I can't pretend anymore that this is just friendship." Before she could respond, he leaned closer and kissed her. It was soft and tentative at first, then deeper as she kissed him back. When they finally pulled apart, Amara felt as if the world had shifted on its axis. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. "Really?" "Really." They walked back through the palace grounds holding hands, both knowing that everything had changed between them. The weight of what they were beginning felt both thrilling and terrifying. The next morning, Amara woke to find Sujin already dressed and pacing around their small room. "We need to talk," her roommate said in Korean, then switched to English. "About your boyfriend." "He's not my boyfriend," Amara said automatically, though after last night she wasn't sure if that was still true. "Amara, people are starting to notice. My friend saw you together at the bookstore last week. Another student spotted you near Changdeok-gung yesterday." Amara sat up in bed, suddenly fully awake. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Seoul is smaller than you think, especially for people from certain families. If the wrong person sees you together and tells the wrong people, what would happen?" Sujin sat down on her own bed, looking genuinely worried. "For you? Probably nothing directly. But for him? His family could make his life very difficult. And they might try to make your life difficult too, just to send a message. That's ridiculous. We're just two people who like each other. In your world, maybe, but he's not from your world, Amara. His family doesn't think like normal people. They think in terms of business alliances, public image, family reputation. To them, you're not a person he cares about. You're a threat to everything they've built. Amara felt a chill run down her spine. Has something like this happened before? There are stories. A few years ago, Lee Ji-hoon's older brother was involved with an actress. Nothing serious, just dating. The family destroyed her career. She couldn't get work anywhere in Korea and eventually moved to the United States. But that was an actress, someone in the public eye. Amara, you're a foreign exchange student. You stand out. If they wanted to make problems for you, they could have your scholarship reviewed, your visa questioned. They have connections everywhere. The joy from the previous evening began to fade, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. Amara had worked so hard to earn her place in the exchange program, had sacrificed so much to make her dream of studying in Korea come true. That afternoon, she met Ji-hoon at their usual coffee shop with a heavy heart. He seemed to sense immediately that something was wrong. "You look worried," he said, reaching across the table to touch her hand. "Soo-jin says people are starting to notice us together. She thinks your family might find out soon." Ji-hoon's expression grew serious. "How many people?" "I don't know. A few students, maybe more." He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup. "Maybe we should cool things down for a while. Just until..." "Until what, Ji-hoon? Until your family finds you someone appropriate to marry? Until I finish my exchange program and go back to America?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Ji-hoon looked up at her, and she could see the conflict in his eyes. "I don't know. I just know I can't bear the thought of my family hurting you because of me. And I can't bear the thought of hiding like we're doing something wrong." They sat in uncomfortable silence for several minutes. Finally, Ji-hoon spoke. "What if we were more careful, met less often, stayed away from places where we might be recognized?" "You mean hide even more than we already are?" "Just temporarily." Amara felt something break inside her chest. "Ji-hoon, I won't be your secret forever. I won't pretend that what we have doesn't matter just because it's inconvenient for your family. That's not fair. You know how I feel about you." "Do I? Because right now it feels like you're more worried about disappointing your parents than you are about losing me." Ji-hoon looked stricken. "That's not true." "Then prove it." "How?" "Stop hiding. Introduce me to your friends. Let me meet your family. Show the world that you're not ashamed of me." "It's not about shame, Amara. It's about strategy, about timing. It's about courage," she said quietly. "And apparently you don't have enough of it." She stood up to leave, but Ji-hoon caught her wrist gently. "Please don't go. Not like this." "I'm not asking you to choose between me and your family, Ji-hoon. I'm asking you to choose between hiding and being honest about your feelings. There's a difference. Give me some time to figure this out." "How much time?" "I don't know. A few days, maybe a week." Amara looked at his face, trying to memorize the features that had become so dear to her. "Okay, 1 week. But after that, I need to know where we stand." She walked home through the busy streets, feeling more alone than she had since arriving in Korea. The city that had begun to feel like home suddenly felt foreign again. She understood now why Soo-jin had looked so worried. This wasn't just about two people falling in love. It was about power, tradition, and the weight of expectations that could crush even the strongest feelings. That evening, her phone buzzed with a message from Ji-hoon. "I'm going to figure this out. What we have is too important to lose." But as the days passed, Amara heard nothing more. She threw herself into her music, practicing until her fingers ached and her shoulders burned with tension. Professor Kim commented that her playing had become more passionate, but also more melancholy, as if she was pouring some deep sadness into every note. On the 6th day, Soo-jin came back to their room with news that made Amara's blood run cold. I heard from my friend who works at the university administration office, she said, sitting down carefully on her bed. Someone has been asking questions about you, about your scholarship, your academic record, your visa status. Who? She doesn't know, but whoever it was had enough influence that the staff took the inquiries very seriously. Amara felt the room spin slightly. They're already investigating me? It looks that way. I'm sorry, Amara. I think someone in his family already knows. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She stood by the window looking out at the city lights, wondering if somewhere out there, Jihoon was thinking about her too. She thought about her grandmother's stories, about love that could cross any boundary, and wondered if her grandmother had been naive or if Amara simply wasn't strong enough to make it work. On the seventh day, as she was leaving her violin lesson, Amara found Jihoon waiting for her outside the music building. He looked tired, as if he hadn't slept much either, but there was something determined in his expression. I've made my decision, he said without preamble. And? I want you to meet my family. Amara felt her heart stop. What? This Saturday. There's a family dinner and I want to bring you. Jihoon, are you sure about this? No, he said honestly. I'm terrified. But you were right about courage, and you're worth taking risks for. He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. I don't know what's going to happen. My family might disown me, or they might surprise us both. But I know I can't keep living like I'm ashamed of the best thing that's ever happened to me. Amara looked into his eyes and saw the same vulnerability she had noticed that first night in the rain. But now it was mixed with a resolve that made her believe for the first time that they might actually have a chance. Are you ready for this? He asked. Are you? I'm ready to find out. As they stood there outside the music building where they had first met, Amara realized that their story was about to take a turn that would determine everything. Saturday was only 3 days away, and it would either be the beginning of their real relationship or the end of their impossible dream. One question, she said. What should I wear to meet Korean royalty? Jihoon smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him all week. Just be yourself. That's who I fell in love with. Saturday arrived faster than Amara had expected. She stood in front of the small mirror in her dormitory room, adjusting the simple black dress she had borrowed from Soo-jin for the third time. Her hands were shaking, and no amount of deep breathing seemed to help. You look beautiful, Soo-jin said in English, then added in Korean. But are you sure about this? No, Amara admitted. But I'm doing it anyway. The dress was elegant but understated, knee-length, long sleeves, nothing that could be considered inappropriate or attention-seeking. She had spent an hour researching Korean etiquette online, practicing proper bows, and learning the formal greetings she would need. Jihoon picked her up in the same black car she remembered from their first meeting, but this time he was quiet during the drive. They both knew that the next few hours would determine whether their relationship had a future or whether this would be their final goodbye. Tell me about your family again, Amara said as they drove through increasingly affluent neighborhoods. My father is very traditional, very focused on business and family honor. My mother is quieter but equally strong-willed. My older brother will probably be there with his wife. They had an arranged marriage 3 years ago, and they seem happy enough. My sister is studying abroad, so it will just be the 5 of us. What have you told them about me? That you're an exceptional musician, a scholarship student, and someone I care about very much. And what did they say? Jihoon hesitated. They said they look forward to meeting you. Amara could hear the tension in his voice and knew there was more to the story, but before she could ask, they turned through tall iron gates and up a long driveway lined with perfectly maintained gardens. The house, though house seemed an inadequate word for the sprawling traditional Korean mansion before them, was more impressive than anything Amara had imagined. It was a perfect blend of classical Korean architecture and modern luxury, with curved roof lines and intricate woodwork that spoke of centuries of family history. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's been in our family for 6 generations," Ji-hoon said, but his voice was tight with nervousness. A man in a formal uniform opened the car door and bowed deeply as they stepped out. Amara tried to calm her racing heart as Ji-hoon led her up the stone steps to the main entrance. The inside of the house was even more intimidating than the exterior. High ceilings, priceless artwork, and furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Every surface was polished to perfection, and Amara became acutely aware of the sound her heels made on the marble floor. "Ji-hoona!" came a woman's voice from the top of a grand staircase. Amara looked up to see an elegant woman in her 50s descending toward them. She was wearing a beautiful hanbok in deep blue silk, and her hair was arranged in a sophisticated updo. This had to be Ji-hoon's mother. "Mother, I'd like you to meet Amara Johnson," Ji-hoon said in Korean, then switched to English. "Amara, this is my mother, Lee Min-hee." Mrs. Lee approached them with a smile that seemed genuine but cautious. She looked at Amara for a long moment, taking in her appearance with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Welcome to our home, Miss Johnson," she said in careful English. "Ji-hoon has told us you are a very talented musician." "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Lee. Your home is absolutely beautiful." "Thank you. Please, come meet the family." They walked through several rooms that looked like they belonged in a palace before reaching a formal dining room where the rest of the family was waiting. The table was set with what appeared to be priceless china and crystal, and the smell of traditional Korean dishes filled the air. Ji-hoon's father stood as they entered. He was a distinguished man with graying hair and the same strong features as his son, but his expression was much more serious. His older brother, who looked remarkably like Ji-hoon but with a more formal demeanor, stood beside a petite woman who must have been his wife. "Father, this is Amara," Ji-hoon said, his voice steady despite the obvious tension. Mr. Lee studied Amara for what felt like an eternity before speaking in English. "Miss Johnson, please, sit." The dinner that followed was unlike anything Amara had ever experienced. The conversation was polite but formal, conducted primarily in English for her benefit. Ji-hoon's family asked about her studies, her family background, and her plans after graduation. Each question felt like a test, and Amara answered as honestly and respectfully as she could. "Your Korean has improved significantly since you arrived," Mrs. Lee observed. "Ji-hoon mentioned that you've been studying very hard." "Yes, ma'am. I want to understand your culture as deeply as possible during my time here." "And what do you think of our culture?" Mr. Lee asked. Amara knew this was an important question. "I think it's beautiful and complex. I'm still learning, but I'm impressed by the emphasis on family, respect, and tradition. It's different from what I grew up with, but I think differences can make relationships stronger if both people are willing to learn from each other." She saw Ji-hoon's mother and father exchange a look that she couldn't quite interpret. "Miss Johnson," Mr. Lee said carefully, "may I ask what your intentions are regarding my son?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Amara felt every eye at the table focused on her, and she knew that her answer would determine everything that came next. "Mr. Lee, I care about your son very much. He's kind, intelligent, and thoughtful. He makes me want to be a better person. But I also understand that I'm not who you would have chosen for him." "That's very honest," Mrs. Lee said quietly. "I would never ask him to choose between his family and me," Amara continued. "Family is too important. But I also won't pretend that what we feel for each other doesn't matter." Mr. Lee leaned back in his chair, studying her face. "And if we asked you to end this relationship? If we told you that it would be better for everyone, including Ji-hoon?" Amara felt Ji-hoon tense beside her, but she kept her eyes on his father. "I would be heartbroken. but I would respect your wishes. However, I would hope that you would take the time to know me before making that decision." The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Finally, Mr. Lee spoke. "Ji-hoon has never brought anyone to meet us before." "I know, sir. He has always been dutiful, responsible. He has never asked us for anything unreasonable." "No, sir. But he asked us to meet you, even knowing how we might react. Do you know what that tells me?" Amara shook her head, not trusting her voice. "It tells me that you are very important to him, important enough to risk disappointing us." Mrs. Lee reached across the table and placed her hand over her husband's. "We have spent the last week learning about you, Miss Johnson. Your academic record, your musical achievements, your character references from professors both here and in America." Amara's heart sank. "I see. What we found," Mrs. Lee continued, "is a young woman of exceptional talent and character. Someone who has worked hard for everything she has achieved, who has overcome significant obstacles, and who has impressed everyone she has worked with. Your violin professor tells us you are one of the most gifted students he has ever taught," Mr. Lee added. "He says you have the potential for an international career." Amara felt confused. This wasn't going the way she had expected. "We also learned," Ji-hoon's older brother spoke for the first time, "that you have been offered a position with the Seoul Philharmonic after graduation, but you turned it down because you felt obligated to return to America." "Yes, that's true. May I ask why you turned down such an opportunity?" Mrs. Lee asked. Amara looked at Ji-hoon, who seemed as surprised as she was by the direction of the conversation. "I didn't think I could stay in Korea long term. I thought it would be too difficult, being so different from everyone else." "And now?" Mr. Lee asked. "Now I'm not sure what I think." Mrs. Lee smiled, the first warm smile Amara had seen from her all evening. "Miss Johnson, we have always taught our children that character matters more than background, that merit matters more than connections. We have also taught them the importance of family." "Yes, ma'am." "So we have a proposition for you," Mr. Lee said. "We would like you to consider staying in Korea after graduation. Take the position with the Philharmonic. Give us time to get to know you properly, and give yourself time to decide if you could be happy here long term." Amara felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her. "I don't understand." Ji-hoon reached over and took her hand. "They're saying they want to give us a chance." "But why?" Amara asked. I expected—" "You expected us to be prejudiced," Mrs. Lee said gently. "And perhaps we were, initially, but love has a way of changing people's perspectives." "Love? It's quite obvious that our son is in love with you," Mr. Lee said. "And unless we are very much mistaken, you feel the same way about him." Amara nodded, not trusting her voice. "Love like that is rare," Mrs. Lee continued. "We have been married for 30 years, and we recognize something special when we see it." "There will be challenges," Mr. Lee warned. "Korean society can be difficult for foreigners, especially in prominent families. There will be people who disapprove, who whisper behind your back, who question your motives." "We know this won't be easy," Mrs. Lee added. "But we also know that our son has never been as happy as he has been these past few weeks. That matters to us." Ji-hoon squeezed Amara's hand. "What do you think?" Amara looked around the table at the faces watching her expectantly. These people had every reason to reject her, to see her as a threat to their carefully constructed world. Instead, they were offering her a chance to become part of their family. "I think," she said slowly, "that I would like very much to stay and get to know you all better." Mrs. Lee clapped her hands together softly. "Wonderful. Now we have much to discuss. If you're going to be part of this family, there are traditions to learn, customs to understand." "Mother," Ji-hoon said with a laugh, You're getting ahead of yourself. Am I? She asked with a knowing smile. I don't think so. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations about Korean customs, family traditions, and practical matters like housing and work permits. Amara felt as if she was in a dream, unable to believe that the evening she had been dreading had turned into something so hopeful. As they prepared to leave, Mrs. Lee took Amara aside. "I want you to know that this isn't easy for us," she said quietly. "We have always had certain expectations about our son's future, but we have also always wanted him to be happy. You make him happy in a way we have never seen before. Mrs. Lee, I promise I will do everything I can to be worthy of your trust. I believe you will. And Amara, you should know that when Jihoon told us he was bringing you to dinner, he said something that made our decision very easy." "What did he say?" "He said that you were the miracle he had been waiting for his whole life without knowing it." As they drove back through the city streets, Amara and Jihoon sat in comfortable silence, both processing what had just happened. "I can't believe your family is okay with this," Amara said finally. "I can't believe it either. I was prepared for the worst." "What changed their minds?" Jihoon thought for a moment. "I think they realized that fighting against this would mean losing me. And I think they genuinely like you, which helped. Your mother said you called me a miracle. You are a miracle. You've changed everything for me. How I see the world, how I see myself, what I want from life." Amara leaned against his shoulder as the city lights flashed past the window. "So what happens now?" "Now we take it one day at a time. We learn about each other's worlds. We build something together, and we see where it leads." "Are you scared?" "Terrified," Jihoon admitted, "but also excited. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." 3 months later, Amara stood on the stage of the Seoul Arts Center, wearing the elegant black gown that Mrs. Lee had helped her choose. The Seoul Philharmonic was performing a special concert featuring works by Korean and American composers, and she was the featured soloist. In the audience, she could see Jihoon sitting with his family in the front row, his face glowing with pride. Beside them sat Professor Kim, Soo-jin, and even her parents, who had flown in from Atlanta for the performance. As she raised her violin and prepared to play, Amara thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. It had started with a simple act of kindness on a rainy night and had led to something neither she nor Jihoon could have imagined. The first notes of the concerto filled the concert hall, and Amara lost herself in the music that had always been her universal language. But now it was something more. It was the bridge between her old life and her new one, between the person she had been and the person she was becoming. When the final note faded and the audience erupted in applause, Amara looked out at all the faces that had become dear to her. Jihoon was on his feet, clapping enthusiastically, and she could see tears in his eyes. Later that evening, at the reception following the concert, Mrs. Lee approached Amara with a small jewelry box in her hands. "This belonged to Jihoon's grandmother," she said, opening the box to reveal a simple but beautiful jade bracelet. "She would have wanted you to have it." As Mrs. Lee fastened the bracelet around Amara's wrist, she whispered, "Welcome to the family, daughter." Amara felt tears spring to her eyes as she realized that what had started as an impossible love story had become something real and lasting. She had found not just love, but a new home, a new family, and a new understanding of what was possible when people were willing to open their hearts to something unexpected. That night, as she and Jihoon walked through the same park where they had shared their first kiss, she thought about her grandmother's words about love crossing any boundary. "What are you thinking about?" Jihoon asked. "My grandmother. I think she would have been proud tonight. I think she would have been proud of you long before tonight." They sat on the same stone bench where they had first confessed their feelings for each other. And Amara realized that every challenge they had faced had only made their love stronger. "One question," she said, echoing the words she had spoken months ago. "What's that? Do you think we're crazy for believing this could work?" Jehoon smiled and pulled her closer. "I think we're exactly as crazy as we need to be. Sometimes the best things in life require a little madness." As they walked home under the Seoul sky, Amara knew that their story was just beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome, more bridges to build between their different worlds, but they would face them together, one miracle at a time. The kiss that had changed everything had led to the miracle they never saw coming. Not just love, but acceptance, family, and a future neither of them could have imagined when they first shared an umbrella in the rain.